Hi everyone. For today's book review, we're going to be looking at a slightly outdated but still interesting book. It is A History of Russian and Soviet Sea Power by Donald Mitchell. As you can tell, this is quite a hefty book, and it has to be because it covers the history of Russian/Soviet sea power from the 900s all the way through to 1972, when this book was published. Naturally, a lot has changed since 1972 to now. Some of the ships that weren't even built then have now been sunk. But putting all that aside, if you can find this book cheap, I found this book for $10. It actually makes interesting reading. And now, after 50 years after publication, it is even more interesting for very different reasons. When this book was published, it was the height of the Cold War, and the second last 2 to 3 chapters of this book is basically a series of what the Soviet Navy is capable of and what the American readership needs to be concerned about. The introduction of this book goes from "this is a history of Russian sea power" to "we need to be careful of what the Soviets are capable of." So it's blending both history and, I wouldn't say propaganda, but I would say just an awareness of the other, or the enemy. And this duality of tones, it's understandable in the Cold War times, and certainly to its intended readership, but to our eyes, it definitely feels out of place. Putting aside the political overtones, it's an impressive piece of scholarship which looks at the history of Russian naval power from the 900 ADs, when they were basically fighting off Vikings. Then looking through at the incredible expansion of the Russian Navy under Peter the Great, Catherine the Great as well, through to industrialization, the Crimean War, and then into the earlier 20th century with the disastrous Russo-Japanese War and their catastrophic loss at the Battle of Tsushima, right through to their performance in the First World War, and then into the Second World War and beyond. Naturally, we now know a lot more about the 20th century conflicts, particularly for all three, the Russo-Japanese War, the First World War, and the Second World War. So those entire chapters are completely outdated. But looking at the previous conflicts, it does make interesting reading to see both their innovations, their advances, as well as their considerable struggles. And you will find that many themes do tend to carry throughout those centuries. If you are interested in the history of Russian sea power, this is a good starting point. After 50 years since publication, there's more updated books out there available, and there still are more information that is tucked away in the archives that is just waiting to be released. But we probably won't get that for, I don't know, until we probably get a post-Putin era. But that's for the future to determine. It is also interesting because you get a viewpoint of how the Americans viewed the Soviet Navy, and the sense of concern that permeates this book, as well as the implications for global power and balancing world conflicts. Some of the warnings and certainly some of the implications that are indicated in these later chapters would make interesting reading if you then think about it in regards to what's happening now, certainly in the Pacific. Just some food for thought. As I said, if you can find this book on the cheap, it's a great early reference book, and certainly something to start off regarding Russian and Soviet sea power. If you're looking at the historiography of Russia and the Soviet Union, this is a great example to take on board. If you're looking at how previous writers took military ideas and viewed them from a Cold War perspective, this is also actually a really good viewpoint for that. Even for those studying global conflicts, superpower politics, there's a lot in here, particularly in the second half, that you can actually use to break out and analyze. So there's plenty here, even beyond its original aims. But having said all this, this book is probably not for everyone. And again, a lot of the 20th century information is now terribly out of date. And so, for all of the history that is compiled into one volume, for all of its curiosity value as a representative of the Cold War and Cold War perspectives, this makes for interesting reading, and therefore it gets 2 captain's hats. So, depending on your interest and what you would like to read between the lines, this would be an interesting one to have, certainly to analyze and to discuss. And as you've probably also noticed, the bulk of it is text. There are a few battle maps with naturally a handful of photos depicting the history of the Navy through key personnel and ships. So there you have it, the history of Russian and Soviet sea power by Donald Mitchell. 2 captain's hats. If you're interested, check it out. There's plenty there for you to read and comment about. So there you have it.